Hi, everybody, and thanks for coming. This is our first virtual town hall, and we thought it would be a opportune time to reach out to the extended Wildwood family, first families, literally, and then our staff, kind of share some important information, some evolving information, and some transitional information that's been transpiring that I think probably people are aware of, but we're going to try to cover as much ground as we can, as much as it makes sense, and we'd welcome to anybody has any questions. But to get it started, I thought we'd talk about probably our most pressing news that we've had.
For me, I've been with Wildwood for 12 years and 4 years in the COO role, and moving in January into the CEO role, like Tom said. I've been in the field for about 27 years, and I started in a direct support role when I was in college. And, as far as the transition goes, one of the benefits of having been here for so long is I know the organization and I know the people and I know the culture already. So in terms of learning, it's nice to have those pieces already. So really I can focus on the pieces that I don't know. And Mary Ann and I have been working really closely since the announcement. And honestly, we've worked closely before that. That's how we operate as a team. And so it's made the transition very nice and very smooth, even given in the middle of a pandemic and, fiscal crisis on the state level. It's still been a very smooth transition so far. We're focusing on things like, board relationships and relationships with our community members and the fundraising parts of things, and lobbying and advocacy. So more of those kind of external focuses that are more in alignment with the CEO role, whereas the COO role has had more of an internal focus. So, that's really what we've kind of done, and that's how we've used our time, and we're meeting regularly. I think weekly we've been meeting since the announcement, and that's our plan through the end of the year, through the retirement. I have been able to get out and, which is on video, meeting a lot of our community partners already. And I think those have gone well. I've had individual meetings with some of our board members and some of our community partners to get from them, their thoughts in terms of priorities going forward for the organization and for the CEO role. And that feedback has been really nice in terms of getting a better perspective and a broad perspective in terms of what the community needs from Wildwood going forward. So, for the next several months, we're navigating a pandemic, and that is first and foremost what we're going to do and focus on, is to keep people safe, to be able to provide services in person for as long as we can, because those are what people need. So that's going to be on all of our minds collectively as we navigate the next several months. Staffing shortages that we're seeing and whatever fiscal challenges we end up having to navigate because of state fiscal challenges. That's short term. We have long-term goals. We're not going to lose track of those. We're not going to get completely stuck where we are right now. We can do both. I think as an organization, we've shown the ability to do both, to keep, to address the short-term things, but also keep our eye on the long-term, mission and goals of the organization. So, we're going to keep moving forward with our initiatives on diversity and inclusion. We're going to continue to see how we need to support people who are aging in our residential programs and day programs differently. We're going to, at school, as changes may be there in terms of districts not sending students, how do we continue to keep ourselves relevant and make sure that we stay, a school of excellence in the area? Because I think that we always have been, and that's something that we prided ourselves on. That's where we began as an organization. We're going to keep families and individuals at the forefront of what we do, as well as our workforce, and we're going to continue to challenge ourselves to make sure that all the decisions that we are making are inclusive of everybody in the organization and all of our stakeholders. And so I'm sure there are many more, but those are kind of some of the major things that I think are going to be on our minds going forward. So. The numbers are rising again. It's on everybody's minds. We're all wondering what that's going to look like regionally. I think we've learned a lot over the last several months in terms of how to adapt and how to keep people safe. I think, we did a great job organizationally. We did a great job back in the spring when it was completely foreign to us. And things were coming at us daily in terms of shutdowns. And now we got to adapt to this. And now we got to deal with this new regulation. And then during the summer, now all of a sudden you can open again. And do you open again? And how do you do that? I think we've established a real good infrastructure of leadership with feedback from everybody to be able to make those decisions going forward now. And we know what we're facing. We may be facing another shutdown in school. We may be facing another shutdown in day services. We're not sure yet what that looks like. We're meeting constantly to just continue to look at the numbers and make sure that we're doing everything we can. The staff have everything that they need from us, to keep people safe and to keep themselves safe. We're seeing, workforce numbers dipping in terms of, vacancies. And that's concerning because we may have to make decisions before, any kind of regulatory OPWDD or state ed makes those decisions for us. And please know that we will do that, based off what we feel is the right thing to do for people. But we do have the goal to try to keep services open in person as long as we possibly can, as long as we can do so safely and keep everybody safe. We saw a regression when we shut down those services in the spring for people that we support. That's just the nature of the population that we support. They need those kind of interactions. They need those in-person supports. We'll try to do so as long as we can, and then we'll continue to work together and adapt going forward. But one of the wonderful things about Wildwood is the open door policy, where ideas and thoughts can just go to anywhere in the organization, and that will continue. And that we want to hear from people who are closer to services than some of us on this call. What are you experiencing? What are you feeling? What can we do to support you? So. That's kind of from the program side of things. I think Ian probably will talk to more of the workforce support.
Absolutely. So, you guys all know we had the emergency response plan that had certain triggers built into it to go from stage to stage, and the same for the reopening plan. Right now, we're still on phase 2 of the reopening plan, but these plans were built to go backwards or forwards as the need arises. So, we're prepared to deal with that if we need to. The staffing piece, it's complicated because it's not just vacancies. We have had quite a few, people leave just due to their own concerns about working in the middle of a global pandemic, but we also just have a lot of absences because when people need to get tested, it's taking longer and longer for them to get the test results back. And so the length of time that they're out, even if they're negative, can be a week. So it is presenting a lot of challenges, and we're definitely meeting frequently and talking about making sure that we have staffing in place to keep everyone safe. And the other piece just coming towards the holidays is, you will be seeing shortly our appeal to everyone to really be cognizant of the guidelines and advice that are coming from the State Department of Health about the holidays, about travel, to keep themselves safe, as well as to keep all of us safe and the individuals that we support safe. So, the more that we can reinforce that, yes, it's, not the way that any of us want to spend the holidays, but that is going to be a major factor in us being able to stay open and continue to provide in-person services. So.
I'll just give you a kind of a recap of where we've been in the last 8 months and where we are today. But one of the things that we had to do is make sure, or what we wanted to do is make sure we could continue to pay staff through this whole pandemic and pay their benefits, and that's one of the things that we were able to do throughout the last 8 months. And the ways we've done that is, luckily, in the beginning of the pandemic, we had some retainer programs. Income retainer programs for our day ed program and ComHab, Prevoke. Our school districts continued to pay us, although we needed to kind of nudge them a little bit to get that done. We gave, even though we were kind of shut down in a lot of areas, we were still able to give bonuses where we could for COVID related bonuses. And, continued on our, Conover programs and our career path programs. And we didn't stop doing all that. So we were kind of running business in a pandemic, based on, the changes every day that would be thrown at us. So we would meet weekly or sometimes daily just to talk about these things and how we could do things. Some of the things, we did end the year pretty well. At the end of June, our fiscal year, we ended it, well within budget. And a lot of that had to do with all the retainer programs. But now those retainer programs are gone. So we're delivering service as much as we can, to be able to, generate the income. And one of our biggest programs that was shut down was Dayhab. And so we continued to, struggle in those areas on how to deliver service safely. But, to date, we've spent approximately like $400,000 on COVID expenses. That's, PPE and hand sanitizer and, plexiglass and bonuses that we were able to do. We've lost about $1 million in income over the pandemic in those, said services. We are down some students, so that's $300,000 or $400,000 just in school with the students that were down. And then, obviously the shutdown programs being able to deliver, less service in ComHab and Dayhab. We're also, at this point, over the last month or so, seeing about a 20% holdback in all of our state contracts. It's not affecting school at this point, but all of our New York State contracts, they're withholding 20%. So that's, through December, that's about $300,000. We look at it, towards the, the end of June in this fiscal year, it's, it's another $300,000. We don't know if that's going to turn into a cutback, or they'll, release those funds, which I don't see that happening. So, we're preparing for those types of things as well. We're looking at different changes in the waiver for residential cuts. We haven't seen our rates for July yet. We don't know if they're, the state has said now that, the governor is saying that, all the state agencies need to cut 5% out of their budgets, and what that's going to mean to the, the OPWDD side of things. And so that's all still up in question. So the only thing we can do, knowing all this and staying on top of all this is be prepared and do it, everything we can possibly do. Some of the things that we put in place was, in the beginning of when this first started in March, we increased our line of credit, so that we could, fall back on the line of credit if we needed that, if income was straggling in too slow. And we haven't had to use the line of credit so far, so which is a good thing. So we do have that available. And working with our banks, and some of the other things we're kind of holding off on larger projects, the non-essential projects, just to make sure we have the cash to move forward. We've applied for federal aid, the Federal's CARES Act. We did receive about $700,000 in federal money to use towards COVID expenses. So we're holding on to that to see where we're going to best apply that. And we did actually apply for, that was a phase 2. We applied for a phase 3 federal CARES Act. So we'll see if we get some additional funding for the agency that way. And, we're just keeping a close eye on expenses and income. We look at that stuff every 2 weeks. Payroll is 85% of our expenses in the agency. So, we don't have to look far to be able to control those expenses. And everybody is working hard to pitch in where they can. Everybody's paying attention to their budgets, and, we got a good, strong leadership team, and they're doing an awesome job through this, crazy time. So a couple of the things that, we did look for, we have, as far as the foundation and programs, is tried to build a reserve on both of those, so this year we actually didn't take a lot of the donations that we received for last fiscal year. We left on the foundation side in a reserve, to prepare again, to make sure we hold on to as much cash as we can, with all the uncertainties of our, our billings and that type of thing. So,
the fundraising efforts are in full force. Nelson just kind of told you all the facts and figures in addition to what we normally raise. So we take that seriously, and we know we have to raise that much more. This past year, like everybody, we experienced a lot of challenges. Like everybody else, we adapted virtually. And so much of what we do is in-person events, reaching out to our stakeholders and just staying in touch, like all of you, staying in touch with everybody, talking to everybody, telling about our struggles, our challenges, showing what where our deficits are, where our emerging needs are. That resonates with everybody. We've been very fortunate this year. We have an incredible community. We have incredible families, staff members that are all in the spirit of giving. They know the challenges that we faced, and we're showing them with our staff and how they're taking care of the individuals that we support. They like to see that, and they depend on that, and they want to give back. They want to help us, not just financially, any way they can. So this past year, just everyone had to step up and be creative. We saw it amongst our agency. All of you, all of our staff just rose up and above, and we're creative beyond belief, so innovative. And we shared those stories in our catalog of giving this past spring, which was our gala alternative, and raised over $180,000, which was incredible for our agency. And those stories resonated, hearing from the families, hearing from the staff, seeing how their support can help the individuals that we support. So we're going to continue to do that. We did that again with our walk. Going virtual was a challenge, but again, we took it on and we did really, really well with that. We raised just about what we raised last year, almost $80,000. That's phenomenal in an environment like this. Again, people are staying by our side, and we're hoping that they continue to do so in 2021. We're planning for another virtual year. Like we say, we're kind of hoping for the best, but planning for, the reality. This time we have time on our side because our events are later. We kind of did things in a flash last year. So, we're just going to have to be creative and then show once again how we're all coming together at Wildwood, because people really like to see that. They know how much we need it, and they do want to help. So if anybody has any ideas of what they've seen out there, let us know, because we're always looking for new creative ideas so we can still shine above everybody else. We'd love to hear from all of you. Thanks.
I think right now, because New York is in such a difficult fiscal situation because of the hits that the state has taken through COVID, the ultimate focus for our field and for, most of the businesses and service sectors in New York State, it needs to be on advocating at the federal level for COVID relief to the states and municipalities. Without that, we can advocate till the cows come home at the state level, and there just isn't any money. That's kind of wasted effort in one respect. So I think going forward, we're looking at using our legislative consultants and our advocacy teams and our leadership teams to build a stronger relationship with our federal representatives. I am seeing some hopeful signs in some of the messaging that's coming out from President-elect Biden in terms of willingness to consider COVID relief for the states and the municipalities. But the key to that is going to be how well the executive branch can work with Congress, and Congress seems to not be able to get out of its own way in terms of negotiating some kind of a package. So we're really using our statewide provider associations and the National ANCOR Association, which advocates for our field, to try and really impress upon the federal legislators the need for relief to the states that then hopefully provides relief to agencies like ours, because otherwise whatever cuts the governor imposes across the board here are going to be imposed on us as well. The other piece, which is timeless, and I've said this many times, I started advocating for people with disabilities when Matthew was 3. Matthew's going to be 34 this year. And it's in many ways scarier now than it was way back when he was a little guy, because the focus, the recognition of the importance of services for people with disabilities to allow them to live in the community is not a priority in our state government, and certainly has not been in the federal government as well. And so even if we get state relief, we have to be able to convince our statewide officials of the importance of funding services for people with developmental disabilities. And that's never going to end. So the important thing is to stay in touch with your legislators, to use the tools that all of the provider associations have created. It's so much easier now than it was 20, 30 years ago to advocate, because you can usually find a pre-scripted letter that all you have to do is type in your zip code and it tells you who your legislators are, and you can adapt the letter or send it as is, and you just hit send, and you are then counted as another person who's interested in and advocating for funding that's appropriate to people with developmental disabilities. I think we've all seen, as Nelson mentioned, we're a $40 million agency in terms of our budget. 85% of that goes to salary and benefits for the people that we support, for the people that work for us. You all know, no one gets rich working at Wildwood. And we've all seen, the profound responsibilities that have been placed on our workforce in every one of our programs. We're going to continue to lose ground, because it's not a profession that people are choosing unless we continue to advance salaries so that people are paid a fair and equitable salary for the extent of the responsibilities that we're asking of them, and so that people can make a career out of working with our loved ones. And that's an uphill battle. It's been an uphill battle for 30 years. It continues to be that, but it's critical to our future. So advocacy is never going to be more important than now, and over the next several months, as we hopefully get a vaccine and begin to emerge from, the battle lines. There's going to be a lot of work to be done to just restore where we were and to move forward so that people continue to have the services and the quality of services that they need. We're still on track to try and have somebody in place before the end of the year so that we have a full team.
We got a very large response. Unfortunately, a lot of the people, probably at least a third of the people who applied for the position don't have any background in developmental disabilities. And that's really something that was important to us. But we did get quite a few. Trying to get final interviews, or our final interviews for the first round completed, preferably before Thanksgiving, but probably more realistically the week after, and then move on from there.
I mean, it's certainly a priority still. I think on the state level and federal level, it's stalled right now. And it was stalling even before, I think, the pandemic. We had a new commissioner come in on the OPWDD side of things who has very different opinions, I think, than the prior administration in terms of how that looks for New York State. And so I think there's just a holding pattern right now. There's a feeling of a holding pattern. So we'll see how we come out the other side of the pandemic and what the priorities of the administration are at that point. But in the meantime, that doesn't mean that we're not moving forward as an organization to ensure that we have the infrastructure and that we are aligned correctly should that momentum continue to go forward. So, we've taken this time to still look at our technology platforms and aligning things in ways that are more efficient internally, that our systems are speaking to each other. We're looking at a new HRIS system. We're doing a lot of things for current efficiencies to offset some of the things that Nelson was talking about, but also to align ourselves to talk to a managed care organization or whatever that looks like going forward. Whatever external environment we need to communicate with, we're taking the steps now. We're not waiting for that. And then we're continuing to expand our capacity to look at data and to be able to really kind of measure things better. We're looking at what we define as quality, and to be able to communicate to an external environment what the impacts of our services truly have for individuals and families, because that will be a huge consideration in any kind of a managed care environment and any kind of value-based payment methodology. So while we see the world around us in that kind of holding pattern, we're moving forward just because A, it's the right thing to do for people, because it is leading to better outcomes for the people we support and families, but also B, because then, that makes us stronger, whatever the environment looks like going forward.
It's really important as a provider of services that we not just let managed care happen. We can't just kind of sit back and divorce ourselves and wait and see what's going to happen. From what I have seen over the last year, the big impetus to push forward is coming from the care coordination organizations, which have already drawn millions of dollars away from the service system and away from supports and services for families to create their infrastructure. And unless managed care moves forward, they really don't have a lot to do. So it's really important, as Lou just indicated, if that push continues, that as leaders, we shape that in a way that meets the needs of people, and particularly the quality of supports and services that people get. Managed care does not fit easily with the day-to-day supports that the people that we support need in order to be stable and move forward with their lives. So it's important to recognize there's probably not a lot of cost savings in managed care for long-term supports and services for people with disabilities. The benefit can be in quality, and that's something that we have to shape, that we have to take a role in shaping. I don't have a lot of confidence in anybody that's left at OPWDD right now that they have any real understanding of the people that we support, the challenges that they face, and the kind of work that we do every day to keep them active and involved in the community. So that's another really strong area where advocacy and watchfulness is really needed. And as an agency that right now, Wildwood is in a really pretty strong position. We're known for advocacy. We're financially, obviously challenged, but in a much better position than many other agencies. And so we have to use those kind of assets to influence what happens going forward in terms of the systems of supports and services. And within each program area, people should not be afraid to do that, because it's really going to be important to what the future looks like.
The DEI community group, we are working on trying to get a group that really reflects all parts of the agency. So I have 19 names. I need to narrow down to 12, but I'm still missing certain, folks representing certain groups. So I've sent out an appeal to those managers trying to get a couple more, but we're going to try and get a meeting set up for the beginning of December, one way or the other. But I really want that group to be reflective of every part of the agency and to be a very diverse group. In terms of participants and families, one person on the group actually is someone that Michelle Brown will be supporting. So there will be that representation on the group. Families, I think, is something that, the group is really going to need to define what its priorities and strategy is and what our mission is as a group. And then there may be a subcommittee that is involving families and pulling them in from that point. The group will be about 12 people, but we definitely want to involve everybody who's expressed an interest one way or another. So those people may end up getting asked to join subcommittees or project groups as we move forward too.
I think it feels endless to many of us, and certainly as numbers continue to grow within the school systems and people's kids' schools are shutting down and going remote, people are unable to come to work. There has been significant job loss among the spouses and partners and family members of our staff. That's incredibly stressful because obviously that impacts people's income and their security and their basic identity. We certainly are seeing kind of the results of that, how it's fraying people, it's exhausting people, their willingness and ability to roll with the punches is lessening, and there's no end in sight to this. And I think, anything that we can do to let people know that there is support out there. Anne has kind of been sharing with our boards and our HR committee and with our management team. Over 1/3 of our staff has used the EAP program within the last couple of months. And that's, we've never seen numbers like that. People need to be aware of that. We've all seen situations recently that, have been somewhat stunning in terms of feeling like you're watching somebody kind of fall apart in front of you. And when that happens, it's up to all of us as colleagues to kind of try and get help or pinpoint that for HR in a way that we can reach out and provide support to people. And we also understand that as program leaders, that's having a huge impact on you. I mean, we're watching overtime creep up. It's not okay for somebody to be working 80 hours of regular time every 2 weeks and then 80 hours of overtime on top of that, because that is going to exhaust somebody and there's going to be a bad mistake made. And so we all need to be looking at, how do we manage this better? How do we provide support for each other? And any ideas that you have, we are open and welcome to, because it's critically important that we support each other in this period of time. People are giving their all. It's tough work. It's risky work because, everybody's coming from different places, and there's an exposure risk to all of us. And we're really we have been so lucky in terms of the number of positive cases that we've had so far. A lot of that is the diligence of people, but as the numbers increase and we're seeing, a really significant surge and wave, I don't think it's realistic to expect that we're going to be able to stay in that little bubble. I think we will start to see more significant occurrences, and that's going to be increasingly stressful to people. And as Lou mentioned before, that's going to impact our ability to keep programs open, because we cannot, staff people on a skeletal staff right now with the challenges that people have and the needs for support that they have. So that piece of things, the exhaustion of COVID and the fact that it just doesn't seem to end. And, I'm even hearing it in my own family. I had to tell my 2 daughters last night that they can't come home for Thanksgiving. And they're like, we're really depressed about the holidays. And I think that's impacting everybody. And we're starting to see those mental health issues, and they are real. So we all need to be really aware of them and alert around them and get people help and intervene whenever we can. And I don't know, Anne, if you have anything else that you want to add to that, but it's really important right now.
Yeah, I think that, as Mary Ann was saying, everybody's fraying, and that includes, we're trying to run a program here, right? And so it can get frustrating. But we've really been trying to support managers to where we can extend flexibility. Let's try to do that, and really trying to understand that people, for the vast majority of people, are doing the best that they can, and when the best that they can isn't enough, then we need to help them. The EAP, fortunately, that we switched to, the new AAP, is much more robust, and they have really built an infrastructure for COVID-related issues that people are having, and how it's impacting their lives. And they really have some good material, even just online, as well as the individual counseling. And there's also, people can get telemental health through CDPHP if they're on our benefit plan as well. And that's, if the issue is COVID, that should be completely free. So definitely those are resources, and people can always feel free to reach out to us if they're experiencing an issue that they just don't know how to resolve. We can help find resources. But again, everybody is really struggling to just keep going and to keep providing. This is tough, and we're asking people to kind of put their health and their family's health on the line every single day. We were all hoping it would be over by now, and instead it's getting worse. So we just need to really understand that everybody's doing the best that they can, and where we can be flexible, we will try to be flexible.
It's not just the internal support too, because a lot of our families have been reaching out to us, seeing how they can help all of you. They see some of the struggles. So, whether it's bringing a dinner over, sending cards, just even saying thank you, they really would like to help. So anyways, talk to your teams if there's anything that you think that might be meaningful that families can do. They really want to help as well.
I don't think it's something that is easily grasped by families just by sending out bullet points. I think over time, we're going to have to set up these kinds of discussions where people actually say that, where we are actually sharing that information with a person saying it. We can provide the facts and figures afterwards, but I do think, and I am going to be very involved in the grassroots family advocacy efforts going forward. And there's a lot of really strong, courageous people involved in that group any day that is not affiliated with any particular agency. And that gives it a lot of power, because then you're not susceptible to the argument, which is, well, you're just trying to get more money for Wildwood. It really is a voice for families. But I also think that each of the agencies has to begin to invite families to that dialogue, whether it's in programmatic discussions, and you bring a speaker in, whether it's, in family groupings where we're trying to bring people together because they haven't seen each other in a while, and maybe you have a little bit of a program component at the beginning of it, and you talk about advocacy. But I really think it's much more understandable in a conversation when people can hear someone lay it out, and then, ask questions, and then you can give them the facts and figures, and they understand what that means a whole lot better than when you just send out advocacy blurbs and say, please contact your legislator.
It is good to have those facts too when you're talking to them. Like the Times Union put together a really good piece that I still use. Like they always have their Capital Region Give section. It's coming out like next week, and they have these statistics of all the organizations, all the nonprofits. There's over 1,000 of them, and how much they put into the economy here, how much they contribute, and how they are a force in our community. So having those facts and figures too, and then sharing them with our other like organizations so they can share it, so we can all become that one voice and fight for the same things that we're fighting for, I think is important too.
mean, I think there's a lot that's unknown, obviously. I think what we have in front of us right now is the pandemic and keeping people safe. And until there's a widespread, vaccine and we can safely reopen programs and get back to kind of pre-COVID levels of support. And then, this fiscal crisis is going to have an impact on services. There's no question. After the negotiating is done, after we'll see what plays out on the federal and state levels, we'll see where that stands. But we do know that there's going to be an awful lot of pressure on organizations to do things as efficiently as they can, and try not to sacrifice quality. Obviously, that would be our biggest priority. There's been talk for years about, New York State and in the DD, developmental disabilities field, going to a more of a managed care / health insurance kind of a model. That's up in the air right now. Nobody really knows where that stands. There's been, talk of that not happening, but there seems to be some chatter that it could continue to keep getting pushed through. We're prepared for that. I think it's the best that we can be in Wildwood. We have a lot of internal expertise that knows what that may look like. And so we're aligning resources to prepare for that. In that eventuality, we're looking at, our technology platforms. We're looking at our own internal systems to make sure that we can be efficient internal conversations, all departments, and then be able to talk to any external, if there's a managed care organization or a healthcare system that we need to talk to, we're preparing for that. We're also looking at how we define quality. And we're aligning our internal resources to, maybe shift away a little bit from what has traditionally been more looking at compliance standards, which is more about our documentation and, physical site stuff. Although we are still making sure that is all top notch, we are now shifting as much as we can to really more focus on people's lives and the impact that our services have on people's lives, whether it's, through other quality indicators, through their own self-expression, whatever that looks like. That translates really well going into more of a managed care global kind of a response. So while there's a lot we don't know, there's a lot we do know. And I think the things that we do know, we are taking care of and we are addressing right now in this time. And, when we come out the other side of this, we'll adapt to whatever, the field throws at us. I don't know if there's a specific thing. I think we need to be open to those kind of things, but I think, but I would qualify that as saying we need to make sure that we're not getting, we're not reaching too far. Like, we know what our core mission is and our core supports are, and you got to be really careful and very deliberate when you start looking at other things outside of there. Not to say that we shouldn't be doing that. I think a few of us went and visited a larger agency downstate before the pandemic, and it was set up by a mutual kind of friend, long-term supporter, and they're probably 2.5 times the size of Wildwood, and they're really the main player down in the Hudson Valley area. And one of the things we met with, some of us met with their executive team, and it was a really great discussion, and we have a lot in common in terms of supports. But one of the things that they mentioned was they've gotten big enough and diverse enough where they don't have to worry so much when, say, OPWDD makes a sudden change or there's a real budgetary impact to any one area. And they've done that in a very deliberate manner so that they really kind of hedge their bets and minimize an impact on any one area. So they do behavioral health. They do, they do OPWDD, but they do several other things as well. And there may be some kind of for-profit components. I don't recall exactly, but as we kind of drove back, that day, we were all kind of talking about like how nice that would be to be able to be that diverse and big enough to kind of be able to weather those kind of storms when it came from just one, it would be a pocket of what you do instead of an overall 80% of your agency kind of a number. And I think we've had that in our minds. And I think we should be open to those kind of things. I think other organizations, there's other independent organizations that are going to be in the same boat, and we need to, be open to having conversations with them because, that could get us a scope that we need to get to, that could broaden what we can do internally in our expertise, and we could learn from each other organizationally, even if that's just a just an understanding contract. It doesn't need to be even something formal, but we've really got to look for those opportunities for more deliberate collaborations.
You know, if you took a snapshot right now, we're a very viable organization. We are very, very lucky to have a very strong foundation, strong community support. The key is going to be what happens, you know, in the future, and being nimble and having the vision and the ability to act quickly on a lot of the things that we've talked about tonight in terms of, you know, I think the future is going to involve much stronger private-public partnerships than exist right now. If we're going to stay true to our mission, particularly on the residential and individual supports for adult. School, I think, is stable, not stable. I mean, I think it's going to go through tough times, but school is a guaranteed right, and there will always be the need for Wildwood School. So, you know, we may have to right size that. We may have to look at staffing and those kinds of things. But the future of adult services is going to be what we, as an organization, what you make of it. And it is going to be, it's going to need a lot of, it's not going to look the same way. It's not, we're, you know, if we continue along with the waiting for our July rates to come out at the following April or May, and then them being cut, and then there is a 20% cut, and then, you know, we're never going to meet the residential needs that families are waiting for, let alone being able to sustain the residential supports that we now have in place. So it's going to have to look different. And I would hope that we would play a role in creating that. I think we have just a wonderful culture, a tremendous ability to innovate, really strong partnerships. As Lou indicated, we've already begun to kind of have discussions with, you know, other agencies downstate that have a bigger footprint than we do, that have done those kinds of things, and with partners up here who are very willing to talk to us about that. So putting it together is going to be the key. You know, no agency is going to be viable long-term with the construct that's in place right now. But we've got a real strength behind us right now that I think will stand us in good stead, as long as you're using that time to envision what the future is going to look like and do something about it.
We're very fortunate to have come to where we are right now, and just think about like the innovation and what happened this year, probably at the worst time. So you know what, we came through it. We're here in November, and there's going to be tough times ahead, but you know, we'll get through it. We will. I don't know. You have to have optimism, because like we've seen it. We've seen us, I hate to use that beacon of light. We've seen us like shining bright and all those cliches, but we've been able to come through it. So I'm being an optimist here. We'll be able to do it. Everyone just needs to hang tough these next couple
I like the sound of that, Lauren. I'm going with that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. We really are in a much better position than most other organizations. Other organizations have already begun closing program, you know, like months ago. I mean, they had to do so as soon as this hit. We weathered it so far almost unscathed. I mean, that is a testament to everybody's work and where we've done. And like Nelson said, the work that's been done 5 years, 6 years prior to this, leading up to this, knowing, you know, not knowing this was coming, knowing something was coming. And so, you know, and so, you know, we are well positioned to weather this and come out the other side stronger. And I think the entire leadership team is committed to that. But I think it's because of the work that happens every day and you know, directly at service level, that is really kept us that agency that has that reputation, that has kept our community wanting to support us, has kept families engaged. All of it is, you know, it's just the day-to-day work that's been done for Wildwood's existence. So it's anxiety producing, and it's going to be bumpy, like we said, but we will be good on the other side of it.
And that's also the importance of a strategic plan. You know, you gotta pull back at a leadership level from the day-to-day stuff and forecast that future. You don't know what the curveball is going to be, but you absolutely know there's going to be one. And you don't know how services are going to change, but you absolutely know that if they stay the same for too long, they stagnate. So, you know, it's the envisioning and moving forward and taking time to plan and look at the big picture and drive it in the direction that meets the needs of the people that we serve, that we've always done really well. And that I think we're well poised to continue. And just finding the time in the midst of COVID to do that is going to be really important. But it really, it will be the future. And I think we're really well positioned to do that.
Absolutely will continue those updates after January 1st. We have all the feedback that we have gotten from all stakeholders has been that they have been profoundly helpful in staying connected and staying up to date on what's going on. And it's really, we've heard, eased a lot of anxiety among stakeholders for that. So that will obviously continue. I know I've heard examples from other agencies. I've talked to people from who are involved with other agencies that say they don't get anything, and it's just an awful feeling, I think, for people. And so, yeah, we will absolutely continue that. And to your second part of your question about, difficult decisions, we want to involve stakeholders as much as possible when those things, come up. We're already, preparing and looking at what can we do if we need to, and identifying areas where, we may have to make some decisions. But I think Wildwood has, to the extent possible, always wanted to do that, wanted to be that organization where everybody was at the table, where even if people couldn't be necessarily a part of the decision right in the moment, that we took the time to explain, to have the time, to have discussions where people could give input and offer opinions and feedback about how we could navigate it the best way forward, so that the impact was as minimal on individuals and families as possible. And that will absolutely continue, Robin. I mean, on our website, certainly there's information for contact for any of us, I believe. And, the way things always have worked here at Wildwood, the way things are going to continue to work is, please contact any of us at any time with those questions. And if we don't have the answers, we'll put you in contact with who does. But certainly we're more than happy to have those conversations, to field those, and, through email, through phone calls, even I think through the website portal, there's probably ways that we can all connect. So,
and I think as a staff, each and every person knows that if you get a call or a family member reaches out, it's incumbent upon you to find an answer or get the person to the right person. That's something that's kind of ingrained in us.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very comprehensive website with descriptions, short descriptions of each and every program that we have. We also have our various publications, whether they're brochures and palm cards and things like that, that describe what we do and how we do it. We have the Reaching Out newsletter that goes out 4 times a year that brings us news about Wildwood and interesting stories and profiles of people. The foundation is always communicating. They have their profiles newsletter, as well as various different mailings and a year in review kind of mailing. So that goes on. And we do our best. We do our best to get in the media as much as we can. And this year we've had several, we had a nice profile on one of our adults as one of the leading women in the area. We were at the forefront of letting people know about what education is like for people with disabilities during COVID. And we do our best to kind of showcase things like our school, our graduation, and things like music therapy was featured a couple of times on the news this year. So we try to hit as many communication devices as possible, from the written word to website, to newsletters, to the overall media, and try to bring the message to Wildwood family, but also to those of us, to the people out in the community that aren't necessarily our stakeholders now, to let people know how important Wildwood is to our community, to as a resource, as an economic driver, and as a place for the very best supports for people with disabilities.
And also a lot of our hard copy materials that we've now adapted and made them digital. So it's a lot easier to send information out to people now. And we do a lot through the foundation. We have a constant contact mailing list of almost like 4,000 stakeholders. So there's always a way to join in on that and receive information as well.
I thank you for all joining us in our first virtual town hall. There was a lot of great information, and what's great about the technology is we're able to record it, so this can become a resource for other people to watch and to gather information, and maybe even inspire some more questions and stuff like that. And I would thank you for being part of it and virtually reaching out to us.
And now that you've seen all of our faces and we've had a chance to kind of bring you up to speed, if something occurs to you afterwards, please feel free to shoot your questions, by email to any one of us, and we'll certainly do our best to get back to you. And that isn't just around what we've talked about today. We want people to feel free to ask questions anytime along the way, because information changes daily, and we want to be able to have people feel like they have whatever information we can give them as quickly as we can. So don't hesitate to access us.
Absolutely. All right. Well, in that case, on behalf of everyone, I'd like to bid you all a great night, and thanks for joining us.